If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
I used to just go with whatever meat looked good or was on sale at the grocery store. But now that I've experienced the exceptional quality, flavor, and convenience that you can get from Omaha Steaks, I'm never going back. They can build a custom food plan based on your schedule, which means less food waste and stocking up on high-quality proteins to always have on hand. With Omaha Steaks in your freezer, you're always just minutes away from a quality dinner. Whether it's Taco Tuesday or a weekend feast. Taste the Omaha Steaks difference and never settle for grocery proteins again. Get flavorful, high-quality proteins delivered by visiting omahasteaks.com. Plus $35 off when you use promo code YUM at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code YUM. Terms apply. See site for details. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code YUM at checkout for $35 off. Minimum purchase may apply.
What would you do if the house you grew up in never seemed to feel entirely empty, even if there was no one but you inside? What if as a child you saw something in the fire that felt as though it had seen you first? How would you handle it if the thing that frightened you the most never fully shown itself, but always found ways to let you know it was there? How would you feel if a place became so dark and so silent that it no longer felt like the world you knew? And how would you explain if all the experiences that stayed with you over your life never formed a clear story, but still felt connected? As always, I don't promise you that we're going to get to the bottom of those answers, but we're going to do our best to take a deep look at them on the debut episode of Season 24 of The Dark Paranormal. Live from Liverpool, The Dark Paranormal with Kevin Eustace. Hello everyone, and welcome, finally, to the debut of Season 24. The time between seasons seems to be getting longer, although it's always the same amount of time, which is only a good sign. That means this show is getting more exciting for me to do, and hopefully more exciting to listen to. Now, before we dive into today's debut episode, a reminder of how we do things around here. So, it is The Dark Paranormal for a reason. We do not do stories about animals coming back to say hello or grandmas waving "I'm okay" from a bus stop. Due to the simple fact, if we accept there is a light side of pets coming back and grandmas waving at us to say they're okay, then it is tacit there is a darker side. And if it is, It's one that's not getting spoken about enough. Now, as usual, we build up throughout our season until we reach what we think is the most intriguing aspects of our submissions. However, today we start with a multitude of experiences from one single submitter. And that submitter's name is Kris from Vancouver. But before we begin, a big shout out to our patrons who not only allow this show to keep functioning and keep growing, but also they get the benefit of being almost shareholders in this show. And right now, we're giving a free week trial away at our highest tier by simply clicking the link in the show notes on this show. Also, that's where you can find the same link to submit your experience that may well find itself on this season. Now, we have this season mapped out as usual, but as we always say, if the right experience comes along, we will find a place for it. And also, if you think, well, my experience is too short for an episode, send it in. We don't care about the length of your experience, and as we used to say quite often, the length of your experience is in no way indicative of how true or terrifying it must have been for you, and we will always find a place for it, be it on Dark Bites or a minisode. So anything that you have that is genuinely in a dark paranormal vein, send it to the email address in the show notes. If you do choose to become a patron, you'll get early ad-free access and also benefits such as additional shows for Patreons only, and indeed a brand new show called After Dark, where I disseminate what we've spoke about that week on a 30-minute unedited video. So head to the show notes for more information. Now, as we said, today's debut is sent to us from Kris in Vancouver. And it's one of my favourite sorts of experiences to start a season, a myriad of experiences, like a shotgun blast of the paranormal season, if you will. Each experience carrying its own series of potential branches for us to investigate. But before we begin, I normally never edit a single submission except for grammatical reasons, so I can read it out easier. However, Kris placed a sentence at the end of his email, and I have a suspicion that you, like I, will be trying to work out the whys and hows as we go through this experience. So I've decided to lift this almost throwaway comment from the end of Kris's email and place it at the start. So, to feather our theoretical nests, it's this. I would also like to add probably an important detail. When we were around 10, my sister did play with a Ouija board more than once with her friends. Her room was the room I eventually moved into. And so, for the first time in season 24, lower the lights, make yourself comfortable, and most importantly, leave your disbelief at the door. As, bearing in mind the previous sentence from Kris, we try to establish the hows, the whos, and the whys of a darkness in Quebec. Hello, Kevin. My name is Kris, and I'm writing to you from Vancouver, Canada. I've had some experiences which I'd like to share. There isn't really one main experience, but many separate occasions that have happened throughout my life that I think are worth sharing. I would consider myself middle of the road when it comes to skeptic or believer. I always like to consider that things probably have a logical, real-world explanation for what's going on. But there are definitely some experiences I cannot fully explain as anything other than paranormal. I've told maybe a handful of people about my experiences, but after listening to your podcast for the past 2 months, I've decided it's time to write it all out and see what you make of it. If you need any clarification, please let me know. Most of the experiences are from my childhood to early 20s, and I have never really thought about them as much as I have whilst prepping to write this. I can attach photos to paint the picture if you wish, and all names and locations are real. I have nothing to hide. First, I will start with some background. I grew up in rural Quebec, in the Val-de-Marne region. This is pretty much cottage country, all forests and lakes with occasional farmland. My parents bought our house about a year before I was born, in the mid-80s. It was a unique house, as it used to be a camp lodge years earlier. It was a single-floor home but had a large unfinished basement, and we had a barn on the property that my mother would use as a horse ranch. We could see a couple of neighbouring houses through the trees several hundred feet away. But for the most part, neighbours were almost non-existent in day-to-day life. This was the kind of area, at least during those decades that I spent there, you could drive home and leave your car unlocked. There weren't really any thieves or malicious people around. Everyone knew everyone in each area. The biggest room in the house was the living room, with a huge bay window going the length on both sides. One side looked out from the front of the house to the huge yard and the fields where we kept our horses. The forests were in the distance. The other side was a gorgeous view, maybe 30 feet from a cliff which overlooked a lake. This room was spectacular for watching storms. The house was basically shaped like a capital T, with the long part being the living room. One end of the house had a kitchen, the door to the basement, and a short hallway leading to a bathroom and bedroom. The other end of the house was my room and my parents' room, separated by a bathroom. Growing up, I'd been told a few times that there were hidden rooms that got walled up in the basement, ones which were completely unfinished, as in the walls and floors inside them were pretty much dirt, but was still large enough to stand in. I only got to see one of those rooms shortly before moving. Almost every room in that house had wooden panelling for walls. Not the fake 80s panelling, but what I think are called knotty pine panels, which are varnished pine boards that you can still clearly see the knots in them. Very dark, almost black. These knots would often look like eyes watching you, especially in the dark when shadows flitting through the windows would play tricks. The house snapped and cracked a lot. Whenever our heating kicked in or it was very windy outside, the whole house would shudder, and it was a very unsettling sound. As I mentioned earlier, my room was at the same area of the house where my parents' bedroom was. This room was creepy wooden panels on all sides, with not one but two closets with heavy wooden doors, separated by a window over a desk that was embedded between the two closets. The only light in my room was attached to a ceiling fan, and it was kind of dim. The dark varnish on the panelling didn't help the lighting situation. So whenever it was nighttime or even overcast, my room would be dark enough that it would be a bit of a strain to try and read. Now that I've painted a picture of the type of house I grew up in, I'll try to write out my experiences in chronological order. The very first one is an event that happened to my mother whilst I was still a baby. I don't know if it was paranormal, a sick prank, or something else. I'm wondering if it is perhaps something demonic or a malicious entity, and if it's connected to my later experiences. My mother had been home alone with me and my sister, who were both toddlers. The phone had rang, and when she answered, a creepy voice on the other end told her that they were watching her, that they could see her right now, and that they wanted to hurt her. They were saying things like they were going to come and get her and do horrible things. To her credit, instead of being terrified, she stood her ground and told them to come on over. She dared them to come. Then she hung up after everything happened. She immediately phoned the police and told my father, but nothing ever came of it and no culprit was found. That's really all the information I have of the event, but I figured I'd mention it just in case. It may be related to any other experiences that I've had. The next event, one of my earliest memories, is from a Christmas party when I must have been about 4 or 5 at most. We had a very large extended family, and sometimes my parents would host a party during holidays. This was a gathering of probably 30 plus people, all sat around the house from the kitchen into the living room, sat on old couches, food being passed around, my mother and a couple of aunts constantly running around the kitchen to keep an eye on the next batch of pies, cookies, or whatever festive food you can think of. In our living room, on the shared wall of my parents' room, was the fireplace. At this time, it was one of those fireplaces that instead of being open, it was cast iron with a glass door so you could watch the fire through. All along the wall near the fireplace, the carpet ended and it was a short tiled stone floor. There was a big bookshelf built into the wall next to the fireplace, which housed our VHS collection, as well as some video games and books. I'm sitting in this area with a bunch of my cousins in a circle, in front of the bookshelf. I'm closest to the fireplace and it was roaring. It was a lovely, nice, warm glow. That house got really cold in the winter thanks to those bay windows. I remember my cousins and sister were talking about some movies that were on the shelf. I turned and looked into the window of the fire. It was like I was hypnotized by it. I looked deep into the flames and in an instant, I felt like I was completely engulfed in fire. It was all around me. What I can only describe as a demon head came through the flames, grinning. It had solid white eyes, horns or spikes coming out in all directions. If I could point you to something that looked similar, it was like the demon head in the logo for the original Dungeon Keeper PC game, which, by the way, didn't come out for another 7 years, so I couldn't possibly have seen this image before. This image I saw was not cartoony. It was real and it was absolutely terrifying. The heat was causing its skin to boil and its eyes were seemingly melting. It spoke to me, saying that it wanted me to join it. It was beckoning me to come in, that it would own my soul. I found myself leaning in, heeding its call. It was like it had control over me. I couldn't turn away. Suddenly I blinked and it was all gone. I was back sitting in the circle, facing one of my cousins, and he said, "Are you all right? We lost you there for a second," as if nothing happened. They hadn't seen or heard anything, so I just sort of bottled it up. I forgot about it for years. I know I was awake and hadn't passed out or anything. I also know I hadn't seen any media that looked anything like that to that point in my life. My next experience was a year or so later. Both my sister and I were, like many kids, afraid of the dark when we were very young. I know for a fact the eyes all over the walls watching me from dancing shadows absolutely did not help, nor did the creaking and cracking in the house, or the vines that grew around my window blowing in the wind, accompanied by the deafening silence that would fall over the house at night when everyone went to bed. This one night, I had trouble sleeping because, well, being scared of the dark. So like many times before, I sneaked into my parents' bedroom and ended up sleeping on the edge of their bed. My sister eventually came in too. Some time passed, and we'd eventually all fell asleep. I was woken up by something though. I'm not quite sure what it was. But I noticed my sister was also awake, and she was also staring at one corner of the room. She was looking at the corner that a big armoire was in. Now, I don't know what she was looking at, and I was confused. Then, a glowing white/blue figure came through the armoire and towards the side of the bed that we were in. It was looking straight ahead, carrying a staff of some sort. It was shaped kind of like a priest with the tall hat, the robes, but it was mostly made of light. And the details were hard to see. It didn't light up the room. It's hard to explain. It was like only the figure itself was bright, emitting only a very soft light, a soft glow around it of blue. It slowly paced the bed right before it got to our faces. I threw my blanket over my face and waited for several minutes. I eventually moved the covers down and it was gone. I asked my sister if she saw what I saw. She nodded. She was very shaken. The pair of us never told anyone about it. The next day, I asked her if that really happened, and she again said yes. We never really talked about it since, and I've locked that memory away for years. I have no idea who that figure was or what it meant, and my parents slept through the whole thing. It turned out I would only need to wait a year or so before my very next encounter. Money goals are things we all have. My personal one is to make sure that I'm mortgage-free by age 50. How am I getting towards that goal? I'm 46, and in 4 years, do I think I'm going to get there? Well, I'm unfoundedly optimistic. But here's the most interesting thing. We only like to talk about money when we've made it, when that goal is achieved. Now, you've probably got our well-being app. Well, Acorns is a financial wellness app that wants to show a little love to everyone who's on their way to a goal. Some people shy away from the word investing because it seems like it's a word for people who know about finance, etc. Believe me, that's not a prerequisite. Acorns is a smart way to give your money a chance to grow. Acorns is easy. You can sign up in minutes and start automatically investing your money, even if you've just got spare change. Acorn supports your big and small goals across every life stage. Plus, the app has the Acorns Potential screen, which shows you the power of compounding and how your money could grow over time. Acorns is an all-in-one. No more finance apps cluttering up your phone. With Acorns, you can invest, save, and give your money a chance to grow in one trusted place. Believe me, I've never seen something like the Acorns Potential screen showing the power of compounding. And even that word, compounding, we all believe that belongs to the ones who work in Wall Street. It doesn't. It's yours as much as theirs. So sign up now and Acorns will boost your new account with a £5 bonus investment. Join the over 14 million all-time customers who already have saved and invested over $27 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/Dark Paranormal or download the Acorns app to get started.
Paid non-client endorsements. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 11 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results will vary. Investment involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/Dark Paranormal.
Spring has landed and we're about to hit summer. It's the time of year that makes me rethink what's in my closet. I'm always trying to keep fewer things but better ones. And that's why I keep coming back to Quince. Fabrics that feel elevated. Quince makes high quality everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen and their insanely soft flow-knit activewear fabric. The best part is their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How? Quince works directly with ethical factories and they cut out the middleman, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Now you may think, well, Quince don't deliver to the UK, Kev, how are you talking about these? Well, I have a friend in America who I order Quince through, and I ordered a 4-pack of the Performance Running Cruise socks. They are light, they are airy, but they're also comfortable. I also ordered the Italian leather everyday sneaker. Now, I have not been able to find this anywhere in the UK, a sneaker that you can literally go day to night in, from garden to nightclub. I have done with these fantastic sneakers. The stitching is immaculate. The wear is perfect. I went all day wearing the same shoe and at night did not have tired feet. And this is what Quince is about. Not only do you get the quality, but you get the saving. So if, unlike me, you're already stateside, refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/darkparanormal for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/darkparanormal. Get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/darkparanormal. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. People are often surprised, myself included, to find out it can be this time of year that December's seasonal financial spend can hit home. And our finances can affect our stress more than we will ever know. Financial stress isn't just about your bank account, it can take a serious toll on your mental health and relationships. With 88% of Americans feeling some form of financial stress at the start of 2026, money worries clearly often bring anxiety, sleep disruption, even depression. And if we're looking for one of the leading sources for conflict within couples, money will be it. So this month we want to normalize the emotional weight of financial stress and remind people that struggling with money doesn't mean they've failed. Sometimes it's just about accessing the right kind of support. Regardless of where you are financially at the present moment, I would take a good bet at some point in your life you've been faced or will be faced with financial stress. For me, it was when I was a youngster and I didn't handle money at all well. I was constantly going over my overdraft, receiving overdraft charges, which I could never repay. And what starts out as a simple money spiral, well, that spiral grows teeth, and those teeth dig into you with stress that you just can't find a way out of. But listen, therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about managing the stress, the shame, or anxiety that can come with it. Therapy can help people unpack their relationship with money, build healthier coping strategies, and feel less alone in the process. But as someone in therapy, their therapist match commitment for me is a game changer. If you're not happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. And it works. An online average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars for a live session based on over 1.7 million reviews. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/darkparanormal. That's betterhelp.com/darkparanormal. It was another night I was having a hard time sleeping. My mother came in to check on me and told me she would lay on the bed next to me until I fell asleep. I did drift off soon after. I woke up later that night from a bad dream, though, of which I couldn't remember. However, what I do remember is that when I did wake up, I felt that someone was still beside me. I was still kind of incoherent from just waking up, so I couldn't really see that well even though my eyes were adjusted to the dark. I felt my mother's hand next to mine, half under the pillow. After a few moments, I quietly asked my mother if she was awake. I then realized she wasn't even there. My blood went cold as I remembered that there was a hand holding mine. I propped myself up immediately and looked. In horror, I saw and felt this hand, which was connected to an arm, slide down the headboard. The headboard was made of bars in this case, and move under the bed. I was terrified. I threw the blanket over myself and just froze for an eternity, or what felt like an eternity. Afterwards, I removed the blanket from my face and looked around, but I couldn't see or hear anything. And whatever that thing was, well, I hope to God it was gone. I must have spent the rest of the night trying to stay alert, trying to stay awake and not fall asleep. I daren't. I didn't want to jump out of bed because I thought whatever was under that bed is going to grab me. It wasn't a question of, what if there's a monster under the bed? I literally saw and felt it. I knew if I tried to escape, it would get me. Eventually, I couldn't fight my eyes from closing, and I woke up the next morning. I made sure to stand on the bed and then leap away from it. I leant down far away to see if there was anything below, but there was nothing there. I had a similar experience not long after, where I could feel hands reaching up from behind the headboard one night, and they were feeling around in my hair. At first, I wasn't sure what I was feeling in my hair. I thought maybe it was a bug or something, and I had a jerk reaction to reach up and swat at it. That's when, instead of a bug, I felt hands. They tried grabbing my hand and pulling it below, but I slipped free. Another night spent curled up in a ball, avoiding the edges of the bed for me. Unfortunately, whatever this thing was, it was far from done with me. Some months later, I was getting ready for bed, and I was playing with one of those very bouncy, dense rubber balls that would fit in your palm, about the size of a hard ball. I bounced it a few times, I got into bed, and I placed it on my chest. I tossed it up in the air and caught it a few times. I was getting tired and placed the ball on the floor at the foot of my bed. I closed my eyes for maybe 20 seconds and... what the hell was that? Something landed on my chest. I moved my hands over my chest and it was the ball. I looked around and in the shadows I couldn't see a thing or anyone. I again dropped the ball lightly onto the floor so it wouldn't bounce around, and as soon as I get comfortable again with my eyes still open, the ball comes back at me, like someone's tossed it from under the bed. I yet again spent most of the night trying not to fall asleep, terrified. This was the last time I encountered whatever was under that bed. The next strange thing that I remember that happened in that room was something that was seemingly out of nowhere. No lead-up of events that I can think of that would provoke it. You see, I spent a lot of my time on my computer, which was between both of those closets I mentioned earlier. I would spend my evenings gaming and often downloading those old MIDI music files that were somewhat popular back in the day. It would be themes from video games or movies, or covers of popular songs but in really basic early electronic formats. I had one of those monitors that had speakers attached to the side. So I put the computer into sleep mode, turned off the monitor, and went to sleep that night. At some point in the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by my computer somehow playing all of the music. And I mean all. I had all at the same time at maximum volume, and it was every MIDI file I'd been playing all at once. At the same time, I felt the most intense presence, the feeling that something or someone with malicious intent was in this room with me. It was like it was making fun out of me. It scared the bejesus out of me, and I have no idea how nobody else heard it. The computer wouldn't respond to a thing I did to make it stop. I couldn't even get the screen to turn on. In the end, I had to unplug it. I've always thought about this event and the logical reasons on how this could have happened. But in the end, it just doesn't make any sense. Not that it can happen logically. The computer would not have been able to play multiple files of those audio files at the same time. It would have been limited by both hardware and software. This was Windows 95, a single processor. It struggled to do one thing, let alone multiple. A virus? Maybe. But then it wouldn't have been able to play everything at once like that from the issue I mentioned before. This is the only time I can remember an electronic seemingly get possessed like that. Later on in my teens, I'd moved bedrooms, and my bedroom was now at the end of the house that included the kitchen. For a while it was good, I had no issues whatsoever. Well, nothing beyond the usual unease of sleeping from the general feeling of something watching me. That a dark presence was in the room with me. I don't know what I was thinking, but one night, frustrated, I blurted out, "Show yourself." In retrospect, it probably was a bad move. From that moment, for months, on some nights when I would get myself into bed to sleep, I would notice the room growing ever more darker. This wasn't my eyes adjusting and I was awake. I had a white ceiling and I would see a black mass starting to form above me. I could actually watch the light fade from the ceiling. I would still sleep with a nightlight on some nights, and whether it was on or off, the ceiling would have a large, clearly dark circle, accompanied by an overwhelming feeling of unease, anxiety, a presence. I would be almost paralyzed with fear when it happened. It was like something was peering in through the ceiling to watch me. The room would go ice cold. I honestly can't remember any interactions from it beyond that. But it was simply an incredibly overwhelming feeling that I just couldn't ignore or simply pass up as being afraid of the dark. I could see it, even if the lights were all out. Some nights in winter, when everything outside was covered in white snow and the moon would reflect off it, my room would be a sort of twilight blue colour, and actually decently lit. Even then, this dark mass would start appearing. The way things sounded in the room wouldn't quite be the same either. It was like the mass was not only swallowing light, but also sound. Things became muted instead of reverberating across the room. There were a few occasions where I actually felt someone sat on my bed by my feet. I could see and feel the depression in the blanket. It would just sort of sit there, almost as if to say, "What are you going to do about it?" One night I was getting frustrated with how it would keep me up at night. I yelled out for it to leave me alone. I told it was not welcome here. I think it must have worked a little, because over the next year, I felt the presence less and less. Thankfully, I moved away not long after, and I hadn't had to deal with it since. The last experience I want to include is also not so much a singular event, but something that absolutely creeped me out about where I grew up. I didn't know how common it is for this sort of thing to happen, but the area around that house I grew up is the only place I've ever experienced this. There were more than a few nights of the year where it got dark outside. Very dark. Most places I've been, rural or not, even if it was an overcast, moonless night, your eyes could still adjust to an extent. You can still sort of see vague outlines of your hands or large objects around you. But around that house, on that property, it would get so dark that you could not literally see your hand in front of your face in the slightest. Using a flashlight would be the only way to illuminate whatever it was directly pointing at. There were no reflections or soft glows of light bouncing off things. It was like the darkness was thick. I don't know how else to describe it. Like a fog. But there was no fog. The part that makes this kind of terrifying was that when this would happen, there would also be no sound. You could walk around the yard, the gravel road, the forest, the field, no sound. Except whatever is directly under your feet and your heartbeat. There would be no wind, no birds, no wildlife, not even crickets. There was always a feeling of something is off that would normally draw you outside to investigate what it was. Maybe this is totally normal, regularly occurring in other parts of the world, but in all of my time living in Canada, in Quebec, and on the West Coast, I've not ever experienced that level of darkness and silence unless I was in a concrete building at night in a power outage. And even then, a few random speckles of light may have emergency power or something. So you'd get a bit of tiny light creeping around a corner. But this was an all-consuming darkness that legitimately felt like walking around in the domain of something evil. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Let me know if there's any questions or if anyone has any answers. It would be nice to connect to someone to know I'm not alone. It did feel good writing all of this out because I haven't shared them with anyone. I will also say I'm someone who wants to believe, but I also understand there is usually a perfectly logical explanation for things. Again, thanks for the chance to share my stories. If there's a way I can send photos through, I will gladly send them on. Best, Kris. Well, Kris, thank you so much for being our debut episode for season 24. There is nothing I like better for the start of a season than a series of experiences wrapped up in one email. And I will tell you why. It really is a kind of, I don't know whether it's something only paranormal podcasters dream of, but it's an ideal starting block because instead of one experience, which could be terrifying, etc., we get a series of really disturbing snippets, which is almost like a cluster bomb effect. And what I mean by that is there's a higher percentage chance that somebody listening will say, that's happened to me. And then hopefully they will go to the show notes, they will submit their experience, and the show keeps rolling. So for me personally, when we receive an email with several experiences centered around the one individual in the one email, I love putting them at the start of seasons. Because, as I say, there are about maybe 4, 5, even 6 experiences within there, or things that happened within each experience that kind of quadruples the chance of somebody listening saying, oh my God, I've recollected, for example, a darkness that seemed to suck sound. Or, for example, my bedding going down like someone was sat there. So, Kris, thank you. It's an excellent smorgasbord to start this season off with. And genuinely, once more, on behalf of all of us, thank you for sending it in. Once more, if you have your own personal dark paranormal experience, go to the show notes, click on Submit My Experience and send it through to the show. Myself and the team realized last season proved one thing. It was the season with the highest number of emails received that quoted other emails being the reason they got in touch. So without saying sharing is caring, or being cheesy and saying sharing is scaring, because we're not that show, sharing is a way to make other people who are experiencing these dark paranormal phenomena feel less alone. And we're not a service, I'm not going to go that far, but we are an outlet, so use it. Until next time, remember, when you're discussing the paranormal, always make sure to leave your disbelief at the door. And unless you're a Patreon, I will speak to you next week. Until then, stay safe and take care.
Right now, refugees from Ukraine, Sudan, and beyond face impossible choices. Pack winter coats or pack more food. Carry extra clothes or carry more water. Take another blanket or take more diapers. These aren't abstract choices. They're decisions families are making at this very moment, as violence spreads and safety slips further away. As crises multiply around the world, UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is among the first to respond, bringing critical relief to families whose lives were turned upside down. With new violence and persecution forcing more people to flee each day, your help is urgently needed. Donate to support the UN Refugee Agency, and emergency aid will reach a refugee family within 72 hours. Your compassion today will deliver exactly what refugees need most: shelter, protection, food, clean water, and medical care. Go to unrefugees.org/donation to make your gift.